The next step is to evaluate sources. So you want to make sure that in your informative speech, your sources vary in accuracy, reliability, and validity. So in order to make that, you can use three criteria. The first one is authority, which means there's expertise of the author. So you have to check that if the author that has written an article you're using has credentials and knows about the subject he's writing about. The second one is objectivity. This means you're using documents created under the sponsorship of some business, government, or public interest groups. So I mean, if you're using a source from the government, it is probably very reliable. You have to identify the thesis statement in order to evaluate the potential biases. And the third one is currency. If it's new, it's accurate. You want to make sure you include the latest information about your topic. The next step is to identify and select relevant information. And your information may include factual statements. This means that the statements can be verified and maybe statistics or examples. Statistics refers to numerical facts because some people understands more when you explain with numbers. And examples, well, they provide concrete detail. Also, they can include expert opinions. This means there are interpretations and judgments made by an authority that knows about the subject you're talking about. They also include elaborations. This includes factual and expert opinion. So both of these ones previously mentioned, and also anecdotes and narratives that are experiences, stories. Also comparison and contrast. This means they highlight similarities and differences between the subject you're talking about. And of course, if you want to make reference to something an author said, don't forget to use quotations. A very important step while writing your informative speech is doing the research. And when you're doing research, you want to make sure you record the information, because you're going to be finding important facts, opinions, and elaborations about the topic you chose. So one way to do this is preparing note cards. They are easy to find, arrange, and rearrange each item of information. Another way is citing sources in speeches. You want to make sure that you always acknowledge the sources of your ideas, because it helps audience evaluate the content of your speech and also gives you credibility. And also you want to avoid plagiarism. So in chapter 13, we'll cover the organization and development of a speech. So in order to develop the body of the speech, first you need to determine the main points. But what are main points? Well, main points are sentences representing main ideas used in your thesis statement. Second, you're going to write a thesis statement. This sentence identifies the topic of your speech and the main ideas. And in third place, you're going to do the outline of the body speech. A speech outline is composed by sentences representing the hierarchical and sequential relationships between the ideas presented in your speech.
Visual support. A visual aid is a form of speech development that allows the audience to see as well as to hear information. There are 9 types of visual aids. The first one is objects, which is a three-dimensional representation of an idea you're trying to communicate. The second one are models, which are three-dimensional models that are used whenever an object is too big to bring it to the speech. The third one are photographs. The fourth are slides, which are presented in PowerPoint presentations in order to keep the attention of your audience. The fifth one are films and video clips, which are used to expose the audience's important processes. The sixth one are simple drawings, which are made by yourself to illustrate a point. The seventh are charts, which are graphic representations so that you can present information in an easy way. The eighth one are maps, which allow you to orient the audiences to landmarks or specific places. And then the last one are graphs, which is a diagram that represents numerical information, and there are different types, which are bar graphs, line graphs, and pie graphs, and those ones are the most used. There are different ways to display visual aids. The first one is computer-mediated presentations, which you made in a PowerPoint presentation. The second one are overhead transparencies, which is an easy way to display drawings, charts, and graphs, and you transfer them into an acetate, and then you can project it in a screen. The third one are flip charts, which is a large pad of paper where you can draw in or present already made presentations. The fourth one are poster boards, which is the easiest way of displaying drawings, charts, maps, and graphs. And you can prepare it on cardboards and then stick them in the room. The fifth one is chalkboards, which is the oldest method, and you cannot use them in all the rooms since there are no chalkboards everywhere. And the last one is handouts, which are used when you give them to the audience to have their personal copy of the presentation you're giving. There are 6 questions you have to ask yourself before using visual aids. The first one is, what are the most important ideas the audience need to understand and remember? The second one is, are the ideas that are complex or difficult to explain verbally would be easy to understand by using visual aids? The third one is, how many visual aids are appropriate? The fourth one is, how large is your audience? The fifth one is it necessary special equipment to project your visual aids? And the sixth one is the time involved in making or getting the visual aid or equipment cost effective? There are 8 principles used when designing effective visual aids. The first one is use a print or typeset that can be easily read by your entire audience. The second one is use a typeface that is easily to read and pleasing to the eye. The third one is use upper and lowercase type. The fourth one is limit the lines of type to 6 or less. The fifth one is include only items of information that will emphasize in your speech. The sixth one is make sure information is laid out in a way that is aesthetically pleasing. The seventh one is add pictures or clip art where appropriate to add interest. And the last one is use color strategically.
I'm going to explain speaker credibility, initial audience attitudes, and language and cultural differences. Speaker credibility is the level of trust that an audience has or will have in the speaker. There are three special points. Demonstrate knowledge and expertise. It is how well you convince your audience about what are you saying, and if you do that, you establish trustworthiness. That is the second point. That if you show that you're an expert in the topic what you're talking about, you will look more credible and they will trust more in what you're saying. The third one is display personalness. Is a confidence, or if the audience like your personality, they will more likely to accept what you're saying and like your speech. The second term is initial audience attitudes. It's the opinion of the audience for what you're talking about or what you're going to talk about, and usually express a certain opinion. And if you want to be more likely to the audience to like your speech, you have to play upon the topic, to play upon the public interests. The third is language and cultural differences. The first is overcome linguistic problems. It's like me talking English, that is my second language, to Americans that speak English as their first language. Maybe they will not understand so many words of what I'm talking about, and because of my accent or vocabulary mistakes. The second one is choose culturally sensitive material. In order to do not have mistakes or errors when we're talking to other countries or other cultures, we must learn about their culture to have common speech.
Another topic of chapter 14 is information comprehension. This is that we need to adapt the information presented to the audience, and again, it's divided in six main topics. The first one is to orient the audience. You want people to know what you're talking about so they don't get confused. So when you begin, you might as well give some brief prescription of what you're talking about. The next one is to define key terms. Words have many meanings, so you want the audience to know exactly what you are talking about. The third one is to illustrate new concepts and vivid examples. Vivid examples helps the audience to understand and remember abstract and complex material. The next one is to personalize information. And we personalize information by presenting it in a frame of reference that is familiar to the audience. And the next one is to compare unknown ideas with familiar ones. So you want to adapt your material to your audience so that they really understand what you're talking about. And the sixth one is to use multiple methods of developing criteria. So people vary in the way they learn, so you might as well want to bring some visual aids, or you might as well want to give them something so they can read, because people learn in different ways and you want them to clearly understand what you're talking about. Common ground is the background, knowledge, attitudes, experiences, and philosophies that are shared by an audience analysis to identify areas of similarity. And again, we have three adaptation techniques. The first one is to use personal pronouns. You want to use pronouns like we, us, our, and this is so that speakers can acknowledge commonalities between themselves and members of the audience. And this is one of the simplest ways. The next one is to ask rhetorical questions, which allows common ground by allowing information that is shared by audience members. These rhetorical questions, of course, are questions that people already know the answers to and you don't want them to answer, but this creates a common ground between the speaker and the audience. And the last one is to draw common experiences, and you can do this by sharing personal experiences to the audience and presenting examples or illustrations that embody what you want the audience to have in common with you.
Hello, so today we're going to talk about Unit 16 from the book Communicate and the characteristics of effective information speech. So, when we're talking about intellectually stimulating, it's like when we're giving new information to an audience. So, we have to be creative and original. So, in the book, we say like creativity, like to be original, to try to do things different from others. So, when we're talking about creativity, we can use like aid, for example, visual aid, like images, like videos. So when people get new information, they will remember because our minds tend to remember things that are visual. So, but we have to be careful because when we use visual aids and information, they have to like to be connected because if not, we're going to like to catch another meaning, and that's wrong. So we can use like repetition, which is like kind of wrong sometimes because we tend to repeat and repeat words. So, but this really helps. So we have to be careful to avoid like this full repetition because it can be like boring. Humor, when we're talking about humor, we can say that people tend to remember things that are funny. So try to use humor for entertaining your audience so they can catch the information better. Um, Also, we have the informative methods that are description, definition, comparison, narration, and demonstration. The first one, description, is to to give information to the an audience that is very accurate, vivid, verbal. Like for example, when you have an image, an object, you try to describe it like it's red, it's like big, you know. And definition is like when you use a dictionary, like the meaning, the exact meaning of the word or the information you're given. Comparison and contrast is like to focus on how things are different or similar from others. And narration is, for example, a storytelling, you know, like when you have information, an event, and you try to merge and create new information. Demonstration is very easy. You have to demonstrate to show off how things are done. So, for example, when you are like you want to try to explain or inform your audience from a recipe from kitchen, you can like cook or try to cook the recipe in front of them. So that's how you demonstrate the new information, and it's really helpful because they will not forget what you're trying to explain.